Thank you, Wolfgang. Um, Now we're talking about sustainability, we're talking about digitalization, we're talking about fintech and high tech and startup and slow start and quick start. One of the driving forces on Hessen's move and Frankfurt's move to get going in the area of high tech and adaptation to the process of digitalization is Tarek Al-Wazir. He is the Minister of Economics, Energy, Transport, Urban and Regional Development. This is a pretty full plate you have to carry, but it makes a lot of sense because all these things are interrelated and dependent upon each other. To bring you and us up to date, he will now take the floor, and thank you very much for being with us. Thank you.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear Lutz Rettig, thank you for your welcome. The Frankfurt Finance Summit is an excellent opportunity every year to foster dialogue within the financial sector and to discuss current issues from different perspectives. And on the move, the future of finance, that topic concerns all of us. So I think the whole financial sector is undergoing a fundamental change. This, of course, primarily driven by the economic and regulatory conditions as well as the ongoing digitalization. And each of the three panels deal with fascinating and future-oriented questions and challenges. The first topic on the agenda is redefining banking, regulatory and economic challenges. Ladies and gentlemen, in the good old days, the function of banks was clear. We had a rough idea what banks did with our money. Then, in 2008, we saw the outbreak of the financial and economic crisis, and the quote that has been attributed to Mark Twain started making the rounds again. A banker is a fellow who lends you his umbrella when the sun is shining and wants it back the minute it begins to rain. Of course, it does not apply to all bankers, but surely to a small part of them. Nonetheless, the recent financial crisis has considerably damaged the confidence in the banking sector. Banks were recapitalized, we should not forget that, by state capital injections. Without the intervention by national governments, the financial system would have collapsed with severe consequences for the so-called real economy. And it was obvious to everyone that something had gone seriously wrong in the preceding years and that it now had to be put right. Consequently, the financial sector was subject to far-reaching reforms over the past years. And the measures have enhanced the stability of the banking system as a whole. We are closer than ever before to reaching our goal of creating a financial system that fulfills its economic duty, providing finance to the so-called real economy in a sustainable manner. But nonetheless, we must persist with our endeavors. According to the ECB's annual report on supervisory activities, institutions still hold significant amounts of potentially impaired loans in their portfolios. And important regulatory measures have to be finalized currently, like the proposed European Deposit Insurance Scheme as a third pillar for the banking union. And of course, the implementation of EDIS is legally difficult because of its legal basis. And this further pillar makes no sense if other risks in the banking system are not being addressed effectively, like the zero risk weighting of sovereign debt in the EU. By the way, prominent regulatory initiatives, structural measures improving the resilience of EU banks, financial transaction tax, and shadow banking system are not at the top of the agenda for the moment. The banking sector in the EU is not making an important contribution to the growth of the real economy in the European Union currently. And in this context, the upcoming review of the previous regulatory measures in the financial sector make absolutely sense. The question is, what kind of finance industry does Europe need and not want? Banks play and will play in the future an important role for companies and for the whole economy. And this applies in particular to our economy and especially to our small and medium-sized businesses. Banks, of course, act as an intermediary between people who wish to invest money and those who need it. They provide funding for investments by companies and purchases by households. They manage risks, they process payment transactions, and they provide advice for IPOs. We need banks which fulfill these tasks. And we need banks that are closely linked with the so-called real economy. And the individual bank, as well as the banking sector as a whole, need to be more resilient. Only a stable and strong banking sector can fulfill its function and is able to compete on a global level. And that is why the regulatory reforms were necessary and they have to continue. But regulation and supervision are not ends in themselves. They must not overshoot their objectives. And in this context, it's necessary to preserve tried and tested structures which have evolved over the years. Likewise, the needs of smaller and medium-sized banks must be taken into consideration. The targeted capital markets union is another important step towards mastering the economic challenges ahead. Whilst it will not replace the provision of loan finance by banks, Capital Markets Union will provide a supplementary contribution to corporate financing, especially for startups and green finance. We'll need to pay attention to ensure that identical risks are supervised and regulated in the same manner. Economic, ecological, and social sustainability criteria will need to be taken into account. Another topic on today's agenda is digitalization. It's not only a technological development. I think digitalization is working to restructure the economy and to change our lives. In fact, we are witnesses of a revolution. Historically evolved and proven business models are being called into question and becoming subject to fundamental change. Currently, hardly a day goes by in Germany without a contribution to the subject of fintechs. There are many successful fintechs and projects, and almost every financial service that is offered by a bank is now also offered or soon will be by a fintech. For the consumer, this means there's a real alternative to the banks. In 2015, the number of fintechs in Frankfurt has risen from 46 to 56. This is a rise of 22%, a rise noticeably higher than the national average of 13%, and I would like to point out some previous initiatives. Mein Incubator, together with Commerzbank. Deutsche Börse's Fintech Initiative. Fintech Platform of Deutsche Bank. Fintech Group and Unibator at Goethe University. The expectations and opportunities are high, and the financial center Frankfurt needs to catch up in this development. Here, as elsewhere, the rule applies: either move with the times or the times will move on without you. So that's also, I think, a good advice for us and for the discussions today. As the government of the state of Hessen, we therefore have a strong interest in embracing this change and helping to ensure that the potential in place here is exploited to develop the financial center into a leading international fintech hub. and the region of Frankfurt enjoys ideal conditions to evolve into an international fintech hub. Of course, the digitalization raises specific and challenging issues, such as the relationship between established banks and emerging fintechs, or how fintechs will be regulated and supervised in the future. The current status of our fintech hub initiatives is as follows. 2 locations are shortlisted. Both are close to the center and meet the varying requirements of a fintech hub. The final decisions will be taken in the next weeks together with the financial community. The aim of concept is to establish a sustainably designed ecosystem that will include fintech startups, present established fintech providers, as well as corporates. A collaborative working environment is a crucial factor in enabling high-growth companies to achieve their potential, and of course, the hub will be also open for further new technologies. The financial community is invited to play an important role and to be a driving force in this process. And the next steps are, in the next days, a letter of interest will be sent to the community. At this stage, we need to clarify who wants to participate in which role, as a tenant or as a sponsor. Then, the selection of possible executive directors will be started. By the end of June, the rental contract will be concluded. From June on, we'll define and specify the center's operational requirements. And in September, that's our goal, we'll be moving into the new location and start the first programs following the necessary rebuilding measures. So that shows we are on the move, and we're not only on the move, we also have a target and we will reach it. Where will finance move to? The answer depends on many factors: demand, infrastructure, regulatory and supervisory framework, taxation. A question that concerns all of us very much is a possible withdrawal of UK from the EU. This would influence the political landscape significantly. A UK exit from the European Union would be a fatal political and economical signal. I think that the membership of the United Kingdom in the European Union is important for Germany, for Hessen, and for Frankfurt. Of course, without doubt, from the perspective of structural and location policy, an undesirable UK exit would have a positive impact on the development of the financial sector of Frankfurt. But I really hope that the United Kingdom stays in the EU, because even without an UK exit, I'm sure Frankfurt will continue to develop. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, a warm welcome to Frankfurt, and I wish you some inspiring exchanges of views and opinions. Thank you.